Thank you so much. My name is Frank D. Lorenzo. I am with Preferred Strategies. Along with me is my colleague, our VP of Product Management, Ben Harrison. Reader's Digest of my background. I spent 36 years in the construction ERP space and last 2 years in the data side of things, which has been a lot of fun. Spent 7 years of my career working with Vista, primarily in the general construction space on the West Coast. And Ben, why don't you talk a moment about your construction and Viewpoint background?
Sure. I spent 18 years working with a heavy highway construction contractor here in Northern California. We originally were using JD Edwards and then switched over to Viewpoint Vista. But again, I guess my major duties there was the business kind of management, analytics, budgeting, forecasting, planning. So I know a lot about kind of the reporting IT difficulties with working with integrated systems.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. So we're here today to talk about how you can transform IT into a strategic business advantage using your Vista data. Vista, give away a little hint, maybe other data. So we'll talk about that as well. So I'm going to go through a little bit of an intro and ask Ben to walk through some examples using the live model. So just by way of agenda, we're going to talk about how your information really can be utilized, should be utilized as a strategic asset. What we mean when we say an enterprise information engine, what I like to describe that is, think of it really as a foundation, right? For all of your data, reports, and dashboards to be created within and managed in a single source of truth. Then we'll get to a demonstration, talk a bit about successful implementations, and then address any questions. So on your digital journey, and everybody's on a data journey, whether they kind of think of it that way or not, currently most people are running reports on what happened. We're looking at traditional column row type reports and looking at what happened in the rearview mirror kind of thing. And then we move up that chain to visualization, like tools like Power BI, for example. We can visualize data and kind of see trends you never knew were right in front of you, looking at traditional text reports. But the journey shouldn't stop there. We want to continue up this data maturity journey to things like prescriptive and predictive analytics, leveraging some of the machine learning AI capabilities within Microsoft, and then Preferred Strategies. Our mission is to be your partner at whatever level you need to sit beside you through this journey, both now and into the future. By way of surveys, if anybody's familiar with Gartner, the Magic Quadrant, or the Forrester Wave, in this case, two examples I have, you see that Microsoft's in the clear leading position when it comes to business intelligence platforms, in this case, Power BI. I often like to say that I think Power BI is quickly becoming what Microsoft Word has become to word processing, Microsoft Excel has become to spreadsheets. So we see a high adoption with Power BI and Microsoft, and we don't see any reason for that to change. Ben, anything you would add to that, or?
No, they just have dominated the market in the last couple of years.
And we see that only picking up speed. So what is the current state of reporting? And we see this quite often, the great divide as we've listed it here, but you've got your Viewpoint data, but most of our clients don't live in a vacuum. Not all of your data is in your ERP, in this case, Viewpoint Vista. You may have other data like weather data on the web or project management, or in this case, CRM like Salesforce. So we have all these disparate data sources that may reside in different places, on-prem, in cloud, in Azure, things like that. And so what do? We custom write reports, Crystal reports, SSRS reports, and we have these wonderful looking spreadsheets. And that's kind of what we're managing. Think of it like we're creating many silos of both reports and with spreadsheets, many times data, maybe a better way. So what does that really look like? I use this slide as kind of a comedic way to show how a lot of folks still manage their solutions with Excel. All hail the powerful spreadsheet wizard. And all this really illustrates is that there's some great looking Excel spreadsheets out there, but how do we trust the data? And how do we know we're not taking data off in some silo somewhere, making management decisions off data that's no longer up to date or even correct? And so why should we look at moving from Excel to data visualization? This gets exciting to me, and Ben's going to show some great examples. But one really good book I've recently read was Data Strategy by Bernard Marr, and simple quote that I pulled out of that: when you visualize your data, you will see trends, right, in the data you never knew were there. Hard to see in a report or spreadsheet. And now Power BI, we're seeing a lot of folks start to adopt Power BI because now it's the greatest thing since the spreadsheet. It's a fun tool. It's a fairly easy tool for an end user to create. But how it's being used in many cases is not much different than Excel or Crystal. We're creating silos of data sets with Power BI, or manually exporting to Excel, taking that data into Power BI to create reports. Again, we think there's a better way. This becomes almost unwieldy to manage from an IT perspective. Of course, we all would like an easy button, and what we're really looking for is strong data governance, strong performance. When I'm looking at a report, how up to date is the data? How refreshed? When I run it, how long does it take to respond and give me the information I need to make decisions? Is it scalable? So when I say scalable, we say scalable. You've got, in this case, Viewpoint, but maybe you continue to add other solutions, best of breed. How do I manage this growing set of data across my enterprise solutions? And then maintainability. Finally, how do I maintain and support all of this? So we think we have a really good, solid way to do that. And our paradigm shift, kind of flipping this on its side a bit, is represented by the magic blue cube you see here, which really is a Power BI data set or QuickLaunch. Now, what we're doing here is we're taking data from Viewpoint, any other relevant data sources I mentioned, could be PM, could be estimating, CRM in this case. We have a model for Salesforce, so I'm representing that here. But that data is brought in, and this is really our secret sauce, if you will, our thousands of hours of IP. We've transformed all that data into something an end user can use. So example, you think of it this way: in Viewpoint or any ERP, the database is optimized for transacting volumes of data. And that's what it should be good at, performance, not necessarily optimized for reporting. So we transform all of that data in an end user friendly format. And instead of you having to manage silos and libraries of reports and Excel spreadsheets, you are now managing one data library, one foundation by which all of your data is maintained. So in an example I would give, if I have a couple of reports where I'm calculating, say, a job cost to complete, and I got it in 4 different reports, chances are I got to open each report. If I want to alter or improve or change that calculation, then validate it, propagate it out to the menus. Where here, that measures living in one library, if you will. I make my alterations here. Once I validate it, it's going to propagate those changes out to the various Power BI, paginated SSRS, or Excel sheets that are calling that data. So one version of the truth, power of one, as we like to say. This really illustrates what we do in 3 steps. And it's 3 steps for a purpose, not just, by happenstance. I like to jump to step 3, which is to me the fun part. Dare I say fun with data, but it can be. You got your blank canvas, and now you're dragging your data on and creating a visual masterpiece. And that can be the fun and impactful part. But what makes step 3 go, it's really jumping back to step 1. And that's where taking all the data from your various sources. And then in step 2, transforming it, that again is our secret sauce, it's represented by that blue cube, into a well-governed data set that has strong performance, security, data governance, so I can create my masterpiece over in step 3. Now, Ben, before I move on, I know you're pretty passionate about this. Anything you'd like to add, or anything you think I missed?
Yeah, and you hear me tell it all the time. We can show you step 3 today in a demo. But those step 1 and step 2 are very purposeful. That step 1 being that data transformation you already mentioned. Step 2 is where you're adding this metadata layering, and I'll show you some samples about what that does for your end users. But the other thing from a IT perspective, in terms of the governance and the security, that's all managed here, right? So you're creating your business rules that say, I can see certain jobs, Frank can see different jobs, and you're able to do that in one place. In this case, most of our customers are wanting to duplicate their Vista security rules that apply that to that step 2. Many of our customers are saying, okay, I want Vista duplicated, but I also need to give my executives access, and they've never logged into Vista. So you can do this hybrid security that, again, from an IT governance point of view, is going to give you a lot more control without having to do all that at that report level, right? You're managing it in one spot, and we find our customers find it is the key to moving forward in their analytics journey.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Now, let's keep in mind the reason for this particular session is how does a solution like this help improve the role of IT? And we had one client that I love the comment. They said, IT has kind of become a superhero for them, or even a revenue department because of how they're managing the data using the model. Now, before I hand it off to Ben, a couple of housekeeping items I meant to mention at the beginning. If you have questions on the right, you should see the question panel. Just please click on that question panel and enter your question at the end. I'll ask Ben or address any of the questions now. I can't commit that we'll answer every question during the session, but I will commit we'll get back to everybody with answers to all questions. So please feel free to submit them as you think of them. And now I would like to suggest, Ben, maybe you can take us through a little walkthrough, and why don't we just take a look?
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to try to make me the presenter, and then share my screen. And this is always, here we go. Am I showing the correct screen?
If you wanted to show your file folders, yes.
Yeah, this is where you and I need to practice this some more. So let me get back to the right
All right, Ben, it just shows we're human too. It's okay.
So I'm sorry, Frank.
Same screen. Do you want to just slide your other screen over this one?
Was that, do you see, is that it there? I don't know which screen it's showing right now. What are you seeing?
No screen is showing yet.
Okay, well then that's not helpful. I'm clicking this thing saying share my screen, but I can't seem to pick which, oh, there we go. I'm sorry. Here, now do you see Power BI?
We do, thank you, Ben.
Okay, sorry, I apologize for that. And we got that recorded for posterity, so everyone will be able to see that. So I'm looking at Power BI, that's at step 3. I'm gonna talk about how that might be used, because we don't sell Power BI. I'm in a workspace, I'm in a particularly I'm gonna go to a Viewpoint workspace so I can look at kind of Viewpoint data alone. And I wanna start with a job cost report. Now you can see we've got lots of reports, but I like particularly looking at this one job cost report here. The first thing I want to do is show you what that data model looks. Now we talked about that blue cube, we talked about that, and I picked the wrong report. Frank, you're going to fire me from this role, apparently.
Oh, Ben, you're too good. You're too good.
Okay, Unified Job Cost Report. I wanted to be here. So we talked about that blue cube and what's that include, and it really is a set of perspectives. In this case, we've got a job cost perspective. I got multiple pages of reports on that job cost perspective, but most people want to see what that looks like. So I'm going to edit that report, and this is the perspective we're talking about. So an end user might want to start saying, I want some reports. I used to build reports like this using Crystal Reports. I've done SSRS. And so often this is intimidating. And we were just talking with a customer of ours. He said, well, you need to have an associate degree or bachelor's degree to make reports in the olden days. But in fact, you don't need that anymore with a model like this and a tool like Power BI. So I can just say, show me my contract and description. It comes in right away. I've got it kind of set up there. Maybe I'm interested in saying, well, show me the actual cost on that. So I might say, well, let's show actual build instead. So quickly I've gotten kind of an actual billing there. I could turn that quickly into a bar chart. I could sort it maybe by contract amount. Perhaps I want to group that by customer. So instead I can come out and say, just give me my customer name, put that above the contract and description. But you can see pretty quickly, I'm making some, good information. I've got the customer amount. I can drill down because I've got 2 layers there to the contract. So some real nice interactive capabilities real quickly. But maybe I want more information about this data. So another thing you can start doing is bringing in other elements like I'm going to add to tooltips actual cost. I'm going to maybe add actual hours to tooltips. And I can add actual profit to tooltips. and even the actual profit percent. The point about this is from a governance point of view, from the IT point of view, these are those things that were defined once, right? So whether that's backlog, cost in excess, bills in excess, and so IT is governing the meaning of these values, but we're sharing those values across all the tools that are using this data set. So an end user now, you see that gray box is displaying a lot more context than just the actual billing, the actual cost. The beauty of the data model is anything in the model can be built into any report or brought into any report. So giving great context, the depth behind it. If you're in a cost and excess position, you might want to know what was the actual cost, what was the actual billing, what was the earned revenue, so you can understand how over or under billed you might be on any given contract or any given job. So this is one thing that we find customers who are moving through data analytics as the IT department creates more control over the model, but then they allow more people in the company to actually become end user consumers. And the data model does that for us.
And Ben, one additional item, just I'm curious, you maybe can help me with this. When you open up those measures, many times those measures aren't necessarily in, Viewpoint Vista. They're created at report runtime as formulas. But now in the model, those measures are set fields that can be used in any of the tools.
Yes, that's correct. And the other part of that step 1, step 2, step 3, that step 2 is sitting in memory. So end users get really quick response time. The technology is not running that back against the production system. It's made a copy. The copy's refreshed at the rate that that you've decided works for your company. Some tables, and they don't all have to be refreshed at the same time. You might refresh portions of the job cost detail table multiple times a day, but maybe only the contracts once a night. Or so again, that blue cube is truly a flexible data set. So to belabor that, I want to go back and look. I'm not going to save these changes. I'll go back to my reading view. But if you look at a report then, and that blue cube and the depth of it, what that does allow you to do is some really neat things. In that blue cube, I mentioned we were bringing metadata in. So I can start plotting things on maps. The things you can do with that are pretty compelling. And end users do really clever things with these tools that you never thought of before. And that's another challenge we find, is that opening up a data model gives you access to ways of looking at your data that you've never been exposed to. So that's one of the other things that IT can be helpful in terms of being a leader and helping the operations team ask different questions than they had before, because the data sets are more complete. You can start doing other nice things like drilling down to details. I've got this report, billings by project manager. Again, I can drill down. I can look at more details for Clark Griswold's jobs. I can say, well, Clark Griswold's jobs, what are the actual billings? I don't understand that. So I might go to the job billing detail. And the point about this is I can be in one report. That blue cube contains the details, and it's aggregated up to the summary. So I can look from the highest level to the bottom detail in one report. That's really important for analytics. The detail, the answer to why I'm over budget or why something's out of whack is in the details always. And so being able to drill down there means I can use one report to get to the answers I need.
And Ben, depending on their setup, there's another IT-esque thing maybe. We can give access to the actual documents that back up those transactions. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. And if we get time to that, I can show that. But again, the depth of the blue cube can include anything, other data sets. That's one of the things we see. Almost every customer we have wants more than just Vista. They want Vista and the CRM, or Vista and Build to Win, or HCSS. And that, again, that becomes this master, it's the Bible of data for your company. To kind of point that out, what that looks like, we've been looking at the job cost perspective in that. The actual data model is much bigger than that. So I'm going to look at this documentation report just to kind of illustrate that. So if I was looking at only job cost, and this will pop up here in a minute. Only job cost is that look we had. It had customer, it had contract, job cost details, it had the contract amount, it's got job, contract items, job phases. So it's really focused there. And then maybe you have a general ledger report as well. Likewise, it's got the general ledger details, it's got the company, it's got the account. But this is the one perspective of the cube. The full cube is this, right? So there's all the relationships between all the subledger modules within Vista. The beauty of that, or the reason that's important, is sometimes eventually you're going to say, I want to look at job cost data, and I also want to look at accounts receivable data, and I want to look at them at the same time. And you can out of that blue cube because the relationships are defined. So I can say, give me my job cost billings and give me my accounts receivable aging, and see that in one view in one place at one time. And I can do that across any dimension that's common between the two views. For instance, the contract, the customer, the timing, based upon the calendar. So that would be true for job costs and accounts receivable, or even job costs and accounts payable, or general ledger and the sources that feed that. So again, really powerful in terms of the depth of the structure of that model is very complete, and it is one set of data.
Kind of ironic, Ben, how that neural network really does make it easier, but you look at it and it's like, wow, look at all the connections.
Yeah, it is. So this is what you want to have to be a foundation for your analytics going forward. As from an ID department, then you're clearly managing and structuring and governing a very defined data set, but then you're releasing control over some of the report development to into the hands of end users who are very happy with the ability to kind of self-determine. And that's where the real wins come for the IT department, and that they've enabled their end users to do a lot more than they ever could before. Some of the other things that are important to think about in this data model is other data sources. So we've talked about the job cost perspective, and I opened the report and edited that. But those perspectives are sitting in a cube that's accessible. So if I'm out here in Excel, and I look at this list of things and I say, well, show me my contract and description, and that's a row. And I go and I say, and show me my actual billings, and that's also a value. These numbers I get here are the exact same numbers I get in Power BI because they're the same data source. One data source feeds any reporting system. What that means, though, is that you can use the right tool for the job. Occasionally, Excel is a really good analytics tool. Where Excel goes wrong is when you download all the data into it and you do the data manipulation in Excel. That becomes its own data silo that can't be managed. You can't validate it. Someone who built it leaves the company, and no one else in the company knows how that works. Again, you're solving that data logic, database management solution back in that data model.
And now is it true that it'll make the size of this spreadsheet, instead of megabytes, it's really kilobytes? It's not.
It does, yeah. So when you download, 100,000 rows of data into the Excel spreadsheet, it would be really big. In this case, this data is sitting still in the cube. Now I've brought in the subset of what I'm looking at, but it does change when I send this to Frank, it's probably 20 kilobytes big instead of 4 megabytes big. So again, it solves lots of data. The other thing it is validating, I mentioned security. I'm logged into Excel as Ben Harrison. So when I query that blue cube, I get back the data that I've been given permission to see. So back again, security governance, that's what IT cares about. When I'm in Power BI, I'm logged in as Ben Harrison. When I run a report, the data I get back from that blue cube is the stuff that I've been given permission to see. So again, you're managing, instead of security in a lot of reports, you're managing security in a blue cube. That's security could be row level security, it can be module level security, it could be really anything that you want to define. You're not really limited to it.
Are those other two tabs examples of what have been built using?
Yeah, they are. Thank you. So I won't look at the GL cube again. It's the same idea. But what you can start doing then is start doing some formatting like this, right? In this case, this cell, just to belabor that, It's using a Microsoft command. Cube value is straight Microsoft stuff. When you buy Excel, you get this. So I'm saying if error, go look in the cube, that GL cube. In this case, it's the GL cube. Give me the actual amount month to date for this year, for this period, for the account range that's in column B and C. So you've seen this type of logic in thing like spreadsheet server. It's kind of similar in that capability, but this is not using proprietary data. It's just, it comes with Excel. So you're querying this data. It's the Microsoft components play really well together, if that makes sense. So we've had customers, build income statements here. You could have all sorts of versions of income statement by period, and Excel might be the right tool to do that for you. But you're not limited to using Excel or Power BI. Microsoft has a technology called SSRS. So I'm going to go here to an app workspace. And this is what we see a lot of our customers doing. Again, from an IT governance perspective, you might want to choose to deploy reports to your end users using what's called apps, so that when I log in, I see these apps, not workspaces. And apps are an area where I can consume reports. So maybe I have some paginated reports that I might be looking at a balance sheet. I need to pick a company here to make this work. So I'm going to do that and review reports. So this technology is called Power BI paginated reports. It's actually Microsoft SSRS, so SQL Server Reporting Services, but it's been repackaged to work within Power BI. But again, this data set that we're looking at, if I look at the income statement and I'm saying, show me, let me get to the filters again. Company is required. And what you'll find is my data for 2017 period 12 is really, really pitiful. But when I start running this, I'm looking at the same cube, same blue cube. I can drill down on the revenue. I can see the details. So the possibilities are really significant in terms of changing how you might want to build a financial report, how you might want to deploy that. And we are now providing the sample income statement and balance sheet with the implementation of our Vista product if you're getting the GL package. Along with that is KPIs. Now, we're currently building out the CFMA benchmarker KPIs for construction. Let me show you, so they're not finished, to be perfectly honest. So you'll see that they'll look something like this, and the numbers are not quite right yet. These are all wrong. So let me go to another KPI location just so you see what they will look like when they're ready. They should be ready in about a week and a half. So it's really a kind of a new deployment. But if I go out to maybe this workspace here and look at our KPIs in this area, this is kind of what you'll be having in the CFMA benchmarker KPI experience. Just give me a second. So if you're looking at maybe something like days receivable, and I go over here and want to know why am I at 42.1, it's red. Here's the 42.1. What you have in the KPIs now is not just the number. There's the 42.1. This is right now, that's what it is. You can see that last year, the gray bar is 41.9. And that means that it's red because I'm worse than last year, 42.1 being worse than 41.9. But I can see the context, right? I can see the history. I can actually see that my receivables this year has been increasing since last July, right? So I've been going up every month. The question is why? Well, this is a ratio. We talked about a little bit what the ratio is. It's a ratio of net sales and accounts receivable. And what you can see is that I've had a slight decline over time in my net sales. At the same time, a really minor increase in accounts receivable. That's driving my trend negative. But the idea that blue cube, that governed data set, provides the depth of information to see these trends over time is where you're getting some really big bang out of kind of a centralized data management system. So Frank, that was kind of the quick high level that I wanted to do. Or do we have questions that?
One question, Ben, before you go off, because maybe you can actually show it if you're prepared to, is on those financial statements, can you drill down all the way to the details through those?
You can. I do not have that set up, but
Okay. Okay.
we do have that ability where you can be at and you drill to the details, deal to the details, eventually get to the actual transaction entries. We can set up drillable links to those, assuming that your documents that you want to link to are in an accessible place that can have a link. Usually it's like an HTTP link to open up that document.
And Ben, do you have the AP example by chance for
I
the
do,
document?
yeah.
Let's take a look at that, and then we'll switch. We'll get ready to answer questions and close it up.
Okay. So I'll go to this particular demo set. So maybe I'm looking at an accounts payable report, and I'm wondering, a little bit about what an invoice was or what might be happening. I'm going to go ahead and focus in on this top invoices by supplier. So I'm hitting this little thing here. This one of the things we like is that you can kind of blow things up and shrink things down. But I might want to wonder, what is 9107? What did I spend $5,000 on with them? I didn't remember doing that. So I'm going to drill through to the details. I'm going to look at the AP details. When I do that, it can tell me all the details I want about that transaction. These are the transaction details out of the AP detailed table. But we created a link now to the document so that if I need to look up that document, I can see that. Again, this linking really depends on where are you keeping your data and is it something that's accessible. But assuming it is accessible, it's really not too hard to set up these links to identify, pull those things up.
That's why we work with your IT team just to make sure that's set up properly. And then that kind of completes a cycle. We're not focusing on this today, so I'll just make mention, but I really call it the 3Ds, right? You look at your data, and a lot of times when you look at data, it generates a question. So you have some dialogue that goes along, like collaboration around your reports. And then finally, the actual documents that back up that detailed transaction. And all of that is kept forever with your report. So something else to keep in mind. And then Ben, one final question for you before I get to the questions from the audience. How would you say this, and I say this from your background, put on your contractor's hat when you were working in the industry, how does this change the role of IT in your estimation? How does this improve what IT is doing?
Yeah, so when I worked in IT, the construction company for a number of times, and I was on that cycle where end user would come and bring the requirements to me, and they say, I need this, and they describe it to their best of the ability. Usually they didn't know how to describe it, and I didn't understand what they're asking for. I'd build this beautiful product, give it back to them, and say, this is not what I wanted. That's what they always say. And so one of the things this blue cube does is it removes that misunderstanding, because now that end user, most often if they have the idea about what they want to build, they can take that model and start saying, oh, I meant by project manager. No, I meant by, I'd rather see it this way. Or even experimenting with different types of charts, where is it a line chart, is it a bar chart, is it an area chart? That's the innovation that you can get IT out of the way and get the end users to do that self-service. That is exceptionally valuable. So now you're providing the governance and security, but you're allowing your end users to ask those questions that they need to ask.
Thank you, Ben. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can share the right screen this time. We'll give it a whirl, see if I can hit it on the first go. Ben, you be my guide and let me know if you're seeing it.
Yep, that looks right.
All right. So one thing I like to mention to kind of wrap this up is I think there's really 3 Ps, if you will, my 3Ds, not my 3 Ps, to success. One we could show you and you can feel and interact with. That's the product. That's the solution Ben was showing. But the other 2, very equally important, is the process and the people. And like any good contractor, when you have a project, you better have a project plan to go from inception to successful completion on time, on budget. Same for us. So we have a really proven path to success that takes us from understanding goals all the way through to optimizing and maintaining and growing and scaling. And just a couple of stats, facts are friendly, I always say. Very, very proud of this. And I share this not to be arrogant in any way, but just excited. So our customer retention rate with clients, once they get on this data journey, 96%. Of those of you familiar with a Net Promoter Score, our clients just reported a score of 75, which we're very proud and honored to have. And internally, our team reports a a 92% NPS score. And I only share those things because I can't demonstrate the experience. I can't demonstrate how our process is. I have to try and communicate that, and then talking to other clients is a way to validate that. So this is the snapshot of the plan we put in place to take you through that nurturing and growth process. And then finally, questions. So let me look at the question panel. Ben, give me a moment. One question, easy one, the answer is yes. Can you have a recording of this? Absolutely, it's being recorded, happy to share. A technical question, can the model be edited? In other words, can IT add measures, add other data sources? What can they do versus what they have to have us, the partner, do?
Yeah, that's a great question, Frank. Obviously, our product's called QuickLaunch. We really see it as a data foundation. It's meant to be expanded. It's meant to be edited. You're certainly going to find new measures. So if you think about cost to date, billings to date, those are called measures. And you're going to have new ones or new filtered ones that you're going to want to create. We will teach you how to do that. Our intention is that to make this model be your model. If you don't want to do that, we are happy to provide the services to do that, but the model will expand. It will expand indefinitely, right? So the bringing in new data sources, new ways of looking at data, this is the foundation to build that future.
Next question, how often is the data refreshed and how much does this tax the production database?
So that's a good question also. We have two major connection methodologies. One is called direct connect, and when it refreshes with direct connect, with refresh, you're going and grabbing data from the production system. Now, often you're not doing that, except maybe once a night, so it probably is not causing a lot of trouble. Larger data systems or people who want lots of different data merged together, we're going to want to have what's called an optimized data store. That is a replication of the Vista data, so the refresh is never hitting the production system. Essentially, we're trickle feeding changes out of the production system, very low impact, and making the refresh come out of this data store copy. So.
Excellent. Well, that's all the questions I see in the panel. So I'm just going to wrap up by mentioning one other thing. For anybody who may be attending CFMA National in Atlanta, both Ben and our founder, Adam, will be presenting on construction project success leveraging Power BI. We'll have a little table there. We'll be there. So happy to say hello and address additional questions. Come try and stump the experts with Ben and Adam. That'll be kind of fun to watch if you'd like to do that and sit in that presentation. So CFMA in May. And finally, thank you so much for spending the time with us. We really appreciate it. Thanks for the good questions. And anybody at Preferred Strategies, happy to help, just reach out. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.